Hi guys, it's your girl here, Ada B, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk. So today, you probably can already see by the title what the topic is going to be about. But before I even get into that, I had to phone a friend to join me for this conversation. Somebody who actually has knowledge and experience of working in this industry and will be able to give us a bit more insight understanding about today's conversation. I'm really excited to bring on a friend and a very well accomplished journalist, as well as now recently talent manager, Ray Sang. Hello.
Hi there.
Hi, Ray. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Not bad, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today on Let's Phone a Friend. I really
Yeah,
appreciate you being here.
I'm looking forward to it.
Love that. How are you? Let the people know who you are, where they can find you, a bit about your work, and then we'll dive right into it.
This is always an awkward question because I never know what to say. But
Yeah.
hello, my name is Ray.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I am an ex-music editor and recently turned talent manager. I say recently, I've been doing it for almost 5 years now. So recently enough.
Yeah.
Um, and I mostly manage hosts and speakers in terms of where you can find me. I guess they don't probably cover the filter, but you can find me on Instagram, Raysang, XOXO. The handle is pretty much my obsession with Gossip Girl back in the day. If you watch it, you understand that. That's a bit about me.
Love that. Thank you so much. And yes, guys, do make sure that you follow and check her out. So, today I have asked you to come along and join me because I want to talk a bit about the death of journalism. Is this sort of like an exaggerated statement or sentiment about the way that journalism is today, or is there some truth behind that statement? Is it that, journalism as we know it is dead and gone, and in fact we've entered into this new space of quote unquote reporting news, that sort of takes away some of the traditional elements that we're used to or familiar with when it comes to reporting news? So I will just throw the question at you first, and if you want to go into like some of your own experiences, or if you've got any specific examples that you want to dive into. But yeah, I will let you kickstart that, and then I'll share.
Ooh, I think that's such a loaded question.
It is.
I don't really think that journalism can ever die.
Yeah.
I just think the form changes. So I think as we kind of change and we kind of move and shift into the digital age, it's kind of like when the internet just kind of first started and everyone was kind of excited about that, it was kind of like, ooh, blog. So everyone kind of moved away from print to kind of blog, but print didn't stop happening. Maybe less frequently. And
Yeah.
I know a lot of magazines definitely shut down their print arms, but
Yeah.
print still exists now. I can still walk down to, M&S or Tesco and pick up a magazine. Print definitely exists. So I don't think that journalism as a whole or as a concept can ever die. I think just the format or the medium definitely is what shifted.
Mm-hmm.
And then even with how social media has changed, that people have a bit
Yeah.
shorter attention spans. And I don't think it necessarily means that they have shorter attention spans. I think that's actually the lie that we're being fed.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you think about it, like people with short attention spans don't watch 25-part TikTok.
Yeah.
So it's like the information agrees to be in a more digestible format, but in reality, the length of time we're spending hasn't really changed all that much. So I think, yeah, it's just the form and how accessible that you make the information. I don't necessarily think like people's want for the information is changing.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you. I think, to be honest, even when I was just doing a little bit of reading earlier today, I was just thinking, news and information is still being, as you said, widely circulated. Just the format in which it's being circulated is completely different. And again, it's being presented in a way that I guess, appeals to how we consume information today. A lot of us are on our screens, we're on our phones all the time. And so, when you're presenting media in that way, essentially now when you've got algorithms as well to consider when you want to kind of relay information as well, you want to put out information or content in a way that, you know, readers will gravitate to. You know, with a newspaper, you got what you got. There was no live update. What the newspaper was for that day was the newspaper for that day. Even with blogging was again a kind of a newer concept, which kind of merges the two worlds a little bit. I feel like it was kind of like that bridge in between before to where we are now, where if something broke in the morning, an editor could go back in the evening and amend that article to say, well, there's been updates, or even add another article to contribute to the existing one. And that would give us live updates. So now it's just that we've got it in a way that almost anytime you refresh your page, you're almost getting live updates of something. And even if you look at, like, for example, more traditional news outlets, like, say, BBC News, if an incident is happening, let's say, in Leicester Square, you can literally see timestamps through the day of when something is happening. So yeah, I definitely agree with you in that. It's in itself, it cannot die, I don't think, and it probably won't. But yes, definitely the ways in which we're used to consuming it has definitely changed. But do you think then, in a way, that that change has been positive? Because there's obviously been like a birth and a rise in a lot of like media pages that report on quote unquote news. And I say news because sometimes the information that they put out is questionable and sources sometimes untraceable. But because, you know, they understand how to use social media, they actually garner a lot of attention. So I just wonder, from your perspective, you know, having done, you know, being an editor, you know, on the online space, what is your view on that? Do you think that, yeah, the change is necessarily bad or good, or is it just sort of indifferent, or do you have a completely thought entirely?
I think it's definitely a double-edged sword, because a lot of the art of journalism, like you mentioned, is just the research, the background prep, all of that is kind of being lost in clickbait titles and trying to get views.
Yes.
I think the reason why a lot of people think that journalism is dying is because of the lack of funding around it, and also the remuneration. Oh, that word, remuneration.
Yeah.
That journalists are receiving. So I think because a lot of journalists really aren't being paid enough, what is then happening is that it's pricing out a lot of people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, and they can't really access to give their perspectives in the sort of mainstream media.
Right.
Which is why I think it is a positive, because I think it kind of breaks down that barrier. People don't have to have gone to like journalism school, they don't have to have a qualification to be able to share their opinions, and people with that raw talent are able to do so.
Yes.
However, the double-edged sword of that is that there is a lot of people like who are able to garner the views that don't necessarily have the training.
Yes.
And it's kind of like when we're only focused on the views, I don't think there's anything wrong with that necessarily, but it's like when we're only focused on the views, those people never feel the need to get training, so they're like, well, I'm getting the views. Right. Why do I need to improve on my craft? I'm already doing fine.
Right.
So I think there's a fine line between opening up access and breaking down the barriers, and having a bunch of people in the space that have no training, because that's not progressive either. So I think you really have to strike the balance with that. We do need to find a way to make the journalism industry more accessible to people from more diverse backgrounds, or who don't, you know, without the whole nepotism business happening.
Right. Yeah.
But that said, I do think that people should be trained, should, you know how to prep for an interview, for example, or should know how to find a source, or how to fact check. Like simple things like that, I think you should be able to do. So yeah, it's definitely double-edged.
No, I definitely agree with you. And I think that's really interesting, actually, that you brought in that element of, you know, actual journalists who are trained, who are studied, actually not being paid. And I think, yes, as you said, social media definitely does provide that opportunity to earn an income using, you know, your qualifications, using your skills. But of course, you know, just with anything, you know, where there is the good, there is the bad. And it does obviously mean that there are a lot of people who might be maybe naturally charismatic, or just understand how to use social media really well, that then use it to their advantage and don't necessarily want to upskill or ensure that they're doing, you know, enough research to be able to put out content that is actually one, truthful, and then, you know, two, that's actually going to like edify or educate, you know.
I
So
think a
yeah,
very example of that actually
yeah,
happening right now that I've seen a lot of is in
yeah.
more like broadcast media space. So like radio journalists, for example,
Oh
a lot
yes,
of celebrities are being given radio shows because they can
right.
win an audience where there's people who I know have trained for years and just feel like they're just being passed over.
Yes.
And I don't think like that's any shade to some of these celebrities, because I think a lot of them are actually really good at what they do. But I
Mhm.
can imagine how frustrating that is for
Yes,
people who invested time, probably did unpaid internships, all of these things, trying to get their career off the ground,
that's it.
only to be passed over because a celebrity was on a reality show for like 2 minutes, and
Right,
suddenly is like now going to bring in the numbers that you obviously can't in the same way, even though you have the skills
right.
necessary to do that job. So I think
Mhm.
that's the thing that's happening now. I know a lot of people are definitely benefiting.
Yes, no, that's absolutely valid. Yeah, celebrities coming into the space is a big thing, and there's actually a YouTuber that I watch, been watching her for a very long time, and about 6 years ago, maybe even 7 years ago, I remember her saying like, soon celebrities will start coming to like radio and podcast and YouTube, because the lines are being blurred so much between what it is to be a celebrity and, you know, the regular person, because we see so much of them now, and a lot of them are managing their own social media. While before, you know, you wouldn't expect a celebrity to be on Instagram live if it wasn't something that was pre-planned, maybe a month in advance, and specifically to do with a rollout, maybe of an album or something, or a movie they're going to be in. But now they can just hop on at, you know, midnight and be on Instagram live, and that's, you know, immediately 5,000 views on a live. So then imagine bringing that to a radio station. You know, obviously maybe the average, you know, journalist or radio broadcaster or presenter, whatever, won't necessarily have that same pull in the same way.
Yes, we're having a really interesting conversation on Instagram, and I want to bring it to YouTube, okay? So, like I've been telling y'all for years now about the celebrity takeover of YouTube. I told you guys a few months ago that with all this infighting, these stupid ass drama channels going at beauty gurus and stuff making national news, creator on creator harassment and all that other stuff, I told you guys in a minute these celebrities will be replacing these beauty gurus, and everything I've been saying is coming to pass. Let me go ahead and play y'all this flashback. Y'all go ahead and check this out. And it's just really disgusting how we're so quick to tear each other down. And what's going to happen is that, you know, this small YouTube community of just regular people, y'all keep tearing each other down. Y'all keep on beefing and doing all this petty shit. And when they start replacing you with, you know, A-list celebrities, and people start subscribing to A-list celebrities and they no longer visit regular schmegler people's YouTube channels anymore, then you guys will understand where y'all up. You know, because that's what's happening. There's going to be a corporate takeover of YouTube.
But I think it's kind of unfair, because ultimately it's not like these presenters can't reach that. Remember, with celebrities and, you know, influencers and things like that, they have an audience because they were already building something beforehand. So when they're coming over pre-packaged. They're not coming over to build something from scratch. And I think all over the entertainment industry, we see that a lot of companies are not really interested so much anymore to invest in somebody's journey from the beginning. They sort of want you to kind of come with already your own niche following, maybe your own branding, you know, come with your own team, and then we'll just fund it to take it to the next level, as opposed to let's help you develop, let's get you the training, let's get you in certain rooms, etc., etc. So I do think that when I look sometimes at what I saw, this is more of an American-based example, but the rapper Lato, when she had a radio show on Apple, I just thought, but why? It just couldn't make it just didn't make sense to me at all. I just thought, what would she need a radio show for? It just doesn't make any sense. And needless to say, you know, that wasn't long lived. Yes, she might have brought in a couple of, you know, 100,000 views or whatever over the course of her time there, but it didn't serve any real purpose, because there was nothing journalistic necessarily about what she was doing. And so I do think that, in my personal opinion, I would like some of the sacredness of journalism to be maintained, because I think that it's important that we can still have sources that we can go to and refer to, that we can trust to get reliable news and information.
Yeah, but you know what? Like, I'm not to make it political, but I feel like, especially now that like we're in like an economic recession,
Yes,
I feel like funding for the arts is like, or like anything entertainment wise, is always the first to get cut. So now,
it's
I
true.
think a lot of companies don't want to take a chance on new talent and just want to focus on people who will bring in the numbers because they know that in terms of ads, they can the way that they're going to get paid based on ads is going to be based on how many people that they can get to listen.
Yeah,
So I think in that regard, like people just want to have as big an audience as possible so that they can generate income and revenue in that regard. Because like funding is just not where it used to be. So I think everyone's so focused on numbers because there's no real funding going into those areas. So like companies who once had the risk appetite to be able to, take a chance to kind of just won't.
that makes a lot of sense. It really does. But then it does make me wonder then what happens to the credibility. I mean, because are we saying that everybody who's already got a platform, is necessarily people that we can trust to deliver whatever relevant information or news, even if we're just talking, let's say, just purely entertainment. Let's even come away from like world news or politics or something like that. Um, a lot of people liked, for example, Nicki Minaj's Queen Radio, but my opinion, whenever I listened into that, it just felt like she was ranting. I didn't
Yeah.
necessarily learn anything about the music industry, about her journey, about working with certain producers, about how to make music like I would have expected. So my only worry then is that, yes, okay, fair enough. Funding is limited and it's better to just kind of go with what we know is going to generate income. But then what is the content being generated then? And what purpose does it then serve? Because for how long does everybody just want to tune into a celebrity or an influencer just going off about topics but not actually having any meaningful conversation?
And I think this is why people take journalism as well.
Mm.
Because it's very, very hard for new voices to break through. And even if you look at like Steve Bartlett's like Diary of a CEO,
Yeah.
that's an amazing podcast, very enriching. I listen to it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And and it's been going on for years. But you also have to remember that had massive investment. Like he did not start with zero capital. Let's all be honest.
Yeah.
So like as like he obviously has to invest his own money and all of that kind of stuff.
Yes.
I feel like there are some that have done it, but it's very, very difficult to build your own voice and build your own business, like generating income, being able to employ staff, etc., build that all off your own back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's that element of it, but there's also the element of like people not being able to afford to get into journalism as in like the traditional way, because a lot of people they can't really afford to be doing unpaid internships. Me personally, I don't believe after the students. So I think what you're then finding is that the people who do make it through are relying on the bank of mum and dad, or just come from really well off backgrounds.
Yeah.
Then what ends up happening is that the media voice is not diverse and it all sounds the same. So like you either have you have two ends of the spectrum. You either have the celebrities ranting and like completely out of touch with anything,
Yes.
or you have people on the other side equally out of touch because they've just never been on the ground and lived the experiences that they're trying to discuss.
Right.
So I think, yeah, that what's happening right now is a real disconnect, and I think that's why there's been such a rise of social media journalists, so to speak, because I think people feel a lot more connection there.
Yes.
And I think
definitely.
people feel like it's a bit more authentic.
Yeah.
So what I would really love to happen is for those people to then kind of like hone in and build a skill. They'll to recognize that they have an audience, but not to become complacent or comfortable, but to actually do something to like fine tune their skills and elevate it and take it to another level. Prime example for me is Amelia from Chicken Pocket.
Okay. Yeah.
In her career, just kind of like watch her trajectory from like where she started. Now I think she's doing like red carpet,
Yes.
and like how that's grown, how she's grown in confidence, how even her interview style and questions have continued to elevate
Yes.
as she's gone throughout her career. she was getting the numbers. She could have just chose to stay where she was, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But she chose to continue improving herself,
Yes.
and you've seen her elevate from strength to strength. And that's kind of what I want to see from other people who
Yes.
are in the same social media journalism space. Realize that you have the raw talent, but don't just sit there. Like, do something with it. And when I say that, I don't mean like just keep doing clickbait and stuff. I mean like actually like sit down and think, okay, so how can I improve here? How can I make my interviews more engaging?
Yeah.
Like, and also I think another thing that people need to do if they're going to be in the social media space as a journalist is kind of get down to the back end and the analytics side of things. Because I think it's all well and good being an on-screen personality, but you need to then go behind the scenes and think, okay, what parts of my interviews are driving the most engagement?
Yeah.
Why? What can I do to capitalize on that? So that, I think that's really how you avoid being clickbaity and doing what you say and going on there and just ranting and just making noise for the sake of making noise. It's got to be have a bit more substance in it. I think that's how you make it.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with you. I think that's really, really true, and I think that yeah, media is a great example of that. You know, I can't remember what podcast she was on, but she mentioned that, you know, the chicken shop date is going to be 10 years old, and you know that's been a labor of love for her. As you said, she's actually committed to developing that craft over the years, and not just kind of leaving it as this sort of just one-dimensional thing. You know, she's allowed herself to grow in that space organically, and pushed herself. And even then, I think she also said in that interview, I believe it was actually on the Receipts, now that I'm thinking about it, I think she was on the Receipts podcast, and she said that you know, she doesn't plan to end it anytime soon, but she can now use those skills that she's learned through that and leverage the opportunities that she's gained through that to go and do other things that she's really, really wanted to do. So just as you said, like the red carpets, interviews and things like that, which I think she's a really, really good fit for as well. You know, her banter, her wittiness, like it really rolls off well when she's on the red carpet. So I definitely think that a need for wanting to go back to learning, you know, it's just like some of the most like basic things, like things that I feel like maybe when you and I were in school, Ray, this was just like, you just understood that if you wanted to do anything, you'd probably have to go and do a bit of research, do a bit of, you know, learn, take time to practice, and then do. And then just because you make a mistake doesn't mean, okay, I can't do it. No, what did I do wrong? What can I do better? And then we go again. While I do think maybe in this newer world that we are in, there is this sense of, if it doesn't go viral, if it doesn't blow up, then, you know, it's failed and it's probably not worth doing it. Or if it does go viral and it blows up, then I just keep doing the same thing until to no end. And it's sort of like there's no in between. And I just think that, again, how much are even the platforms that are, you know, already established, or the people that are established, communicating that? You know, for me, I'm not saying everybody has to be a preacher and a teacher, but I always do feel like when you have a platform, we do have a little bit of a responsibility to be honest with our audience about certain things. And I think that, you know, encouraging good ethical practices when it comes to, you know, reporting news and information is incredibly important, and I think should be encouraged by anyone who does that kind of work. But that's just my opinion. But I do want to know from you as well, actually, in terms of, because you mentioned even analytics there, which I think is a good point to just zoom in on for a minute. When someone goes viral for a specific thing, as I mentioned, there is a tendency for them to just kind of repeat that thing because they know it works. And so they want to just keep seeing that, you know, obviously repeated so it can increase traction, engagement, all of that kind of stuff. But at what point should someone then sort of try to maybe evolve their content or shift the focus of their content? Or should they never do that? Is it in fact that is the right way to approach wanting to kind of build an audience?
I think honestly it depends on like what went viral and what. So for example, if your videos that went viral are kind of like more rant-based videos, I would then sit down and think, okay, so why did this go viral? Like, was it the theme? Was it the subject matter? Was it the, like, just kind of why? To go down into the why and the specifics of the why, and like, what is the connection point? Because a lot of the time, it's not that you need to make, like, you keep remaking the same video. It's that you need to figure out what the connection point was and expand on the connection point. So it doesn't need to be like, oh, I need to just rant all the time, because it might not be that you granted that connection. It might be the subject matter or your opinions on that thing. So it's kind of like, I think definitely go down into why. And I don't think you should just keep doing something just because it's going viral. Did you enjoy making that content? Because honestly, if you don't enjoy making that content, it doesn't matter that it's gone viral, because again, you're going to grow to resent it. You can only keep doing something sustainably if it somehow brings you some sense of joy or fulfillment. That's my personal belief. Other people might say otherwise, but my personal belief is that if you might be able to do it, but it won't be long term. So if you want to be able to sustainably do something, no matter how viral or non-viral it's going, do you enjoy it? Like, that's kind of where it needs to begin and end for me. And if it's a case of something that you are enjoying but you don't feel like a connection or it's not going viral, then you need to also go down into why. Like, how can you make this connect? Look at the stuff in your niche that is going viral. Why is that going viral? And what am I doing differently that's kind of creating a disconnect? And then just pick it up. And you mentioned, when do you start using analytics, or when you start looking into it? From the very beginning, even when there's only one view, where is that one view coming from? Why is one person watching my content? Because you never know. But I was listening to something the other day, and they were like, the person was basically saying that their content was only getting 11 views, and one of those 11 views was Oprah. So it was like, you don't know who that one person is. You could be getting 10 views, but 2 of those views could come from a different country. Maybe your audience is there. Like, you never know. So I definitely think always look into it.
So just going back to what you said a bit before, enjoying what you do is also very, very important, because I do sometimes also get the sense that a lot of the times I come across certain content, it's like, did you just put this out so you said you can say you put something out today, or was there like, oh, I'm really interested in this topic, or I really want to talk to my audience today, or, you know, I'm just was so excited to film that I just had to get back on camera, you know. And I don't know that sometimes people realize that, you know, audiences, I mean, we're all people. We can sometimes recognize and feel and sense when somebody is just doing something for the sake of doing something, as opposed to, hey, I really want to be doing this right now, or I really want to get on here and share this with you guys right now. And I think that's really important, because also when you're trying to then build something, is understanding that viral moment might not happen for 5 years. But when it happens, then everything changes from there. Or it might not even ever be a viral moment. It just might be that gradually, with each post, over time, as you kind of diversify maybe your content, or where you put your content, or how you deliver your content, that an audience will grow and engage. And as you said, as you're looking into those analytics, you'll start knowing what is it that they're gravitating more, so what you can do more of, that they like and that they enjoy, as you're continuing to stay authentic to what it is that you're trying to share or produce, etc. And that actually, no matter what way you go about it, there needs to sort of be a long-term plan. And my thing, I think, that I have with currently like journalism right now, is everything feels very in the now, as opposed to delivering what is going to make sense 5 months, 5 years from now. You know, I kind of understand certain like news publications, for example, having Twitter, because I'm not going to lie to you, I get a lot of my news off of Twitter, or X, it's now known as X. I get a lot of my information from there. So I can understand them wanting to be connected on there. But then sometimes when they're posting a headline, you know, there might be emojis, or there might be, you know, it might be a bit silly. And I'm just thinking, if you're delivering real news, just deliver real news. Because when we're coming to this platform, we understand that that's what we're coming from. We're not expecting you to comment in the same way the Shade Borough would, for example, you know what I mean? Or the Jasmine brand would tweet. We would expect you to still deliver the news. So I sometimes do wonder, do these kind of larger publications, are they aware that, or do they care even anymore that by trying to kind of be a part of the trend or the social media conversation as opposed to just being authentic to what they represent and what they're supposed to be doing, whether they understand the long-term impact of that or not?
I think the problem is like a lot of companies, brands, news outlets, etc., are completely forgetting the lanes in which they fit.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think there's anything wrong with that if you've always been a brand that's been a bit cheeky and will say, hey. But I think it really starts becoming like scary, for want of a better word, when you're reporting on war and then like making jokes. I just what about that is funny? Like why do you think that's appropriate? And I think like we're really blurring the lines, because if you're supposed to be a publication of respect,
Mm-hmm.
where people hold you to this utmost highest regard, and you're there doing TT about like I don't know, like things like what I think there's a like massive disconnect there. I think it's fun to kiki about things like weather. Like you can sprinkle it here and there, but like choose the appropriate moments. I don't think there's anything wrong with like humanizing a brand or humanizing publications. I think that's fine. But I think there are specific areas where it's just like report the news and go. This does not need to have emojis. This does not need to be a joke. Like this is very serious. It's like why would you be making a joke or like having emojis about a missing person's report?
Right.
Or like there's a serial killer on the loose. Oh my god, dead emoji. Like is everyone okay? Like,
Yeah, like it's
like why is that appropriate?
yes,
Like
exactly.
I genuinely wonder, like, who okays this? Like, that must be a really awkward boardroom, like, round table type conversation when they're like reviewing the social media post of the week and just
Right.
why? Just why? Like a primary example, it's not even a news outlet, but it's a brand that I just think is doing entirely too much. Pretty Little Thing.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And I think it's to the point where like the consumers themselves are like starting to say things like, "I'm sure you're a fashion brand, like just focus on that."
Exactly.
Like, you're doing entirely too much when the consumers themselves are starting to become uncomfortable.
Exactly.
And I think people are leaning towards, again, goes back to this kind of conversation on numbers, the shock factor, trying to get people to, engage in conversation. Because I think, I don't know if this is exactly how it works now, but I believe Twitter is now paying people based on their engagement. So I think the more engagement you get, like you can actually get payment from that. I don't know if
Yes.
that's
Yeah, probably.
specifically your brand. I do know a lot of creators on Twitter, or a lot of like public figures on Twitter. They do get funds from the amount of engagement their tweet gets. So I don't know whether the brands are now trying to lean into that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, something about that I find unsettling. The moment you start making your audience uncomfortable, you're flipping.
Yes, exactly. I think, yeah, you just spawned one. This is like the Pretty Little Thing example is perfect because I have seen it as well so many times. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know why. You are just entirely, commenting or doing things that have nothing to do with what you've got going on. Another brand that does this is Duolingo. And I was on TikTok the other day and I was terrified.
I know what you're talking about, that's why I'm laughing.
Why is the Duolingo bird in a bikini, number one? Then they linked up with Dr. Miami, who is a very infamous plastic surgeon in America, and got a BBL. And I just thought, why? And then there's like a running joke of like the Duolingo bird putting people in a basement until they learn the language they signed up to learn. So it's just like, there's a lot going on with Duolingo at the moment. I'm like, I thought this was an app for learning languages. What is it's got its own narrative right now? Like it's doing something completely different. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like, yeah, the lines are very blurred. I feel like when you are an organization that big, the power is in your hands actually to set the tone for how your consumers interact with you and or what you want to be, known as, or whatever the case might be. And I just find it so weird that they're almost trying to assimilate to us and we're almost saying, can you not? Can you just be that thing? Because we already have so many platforms or platforms, shows, whatever, brands that already do all of that goofy, gimmicky stuff. and we run there when we want to enjoy. But when we come to you, we actually just want, like, can you just reply to my email about the fact that the app is not working? How about that? Instead of you going on Twitter and making, jokes about whatever's trending today. Or like, what happened in the news recently? Was it, I always forget, Rishi Sunak, that's our Prime Minister, correct? He was in a conversation with, and what's the gentleman's name? I never remember his name. Is it Piers Morgan?
Most likely was.
I think it was him. I never remember his name, but I think it's him. And, Rishi Sunak was like essentially putting down a bet, saying, he bets £1,000 that the whole, plane to Rwanda immigrant situation will be good to go, right? And there was just all these kind of like publications making little snidey remarks and jokes. And I just thought, this is actually not even funny. The topic at hand is not funny. Let's just start there. Why our Prime Minister is making a bet about it, I don't even know. That's a topic and it's for another day. And then on top of that, now we've got news publications who should be reporting on this seriously so we can get more information as to what in the world is going on, and now making little playful remarks and jokes. Like, I'm like, no. And the thing is, that then discourages people from going to read the real article, because they're like, well, if this is the headline, then the assumption is this is not serious.
Not to be controversial, but I often think like that's a tactic to kind of like, whenever there's a serious issue, to try and play it down, or to kind of like stop public outroar. Let's make a joke about it. Like, people don't think, for that same reason that you just mentioned. People don't think,
yeah.
Maybe people don't look into it further because it's like, oh yes, this is no big joke anyway, and everyone just brushes it off. And then before you know it, like this whole situation with the whole, like, them renaming train lines after, like,
oh my gosh,
and all that kind of nonsense, right? Yeah. I'm so thankful that people aren't making jokes and people are like, oh, but where's the remuneration? Or like, where is the, people need to be paid, for like what's happened to them. Where's the compensation? Like, I'm so glad that like people have like not allowed this to go over their heads.
Absolutely.
I feel like I'm not to like be a conspiracy theorist, but I genuinely believe like sometimes people make like these jokey headlines or like these play down major issues to take away from the severity and the seriousness of what's actually going on, because they realize once they do so, as you mentioned, nobody's pushing further into the article. So I think, that's definitely something that's happening. I think maybe that is a tactic that people are using. Just let's all be unserious so that nobody realizes how serious it is.
Yeah. I would agree with your theory, to be honest, I think, because it just doesn't make sense. I was reading some of those headlines and I thought, and I'm going to insert them in the video, but I just thought to myself, what is funny? I'm just literally trying to find the joke. I'm literally trying to find out what is funny about it. Why are we making shady remarks? You need to address this seriously. I need a journalist to actually write and report on this, like, seriously. And then a lot of the time, even when you go in to read some of the articles, and I don't want to take away from, I'm not going to name any specific publication because I don't want to say that, this is what every writer or, editor is doing when they're, writing some of these stories. But again, it's sort of just outlining what we've already seen. When I'm coming to a journalist, I'm actually looking for you to give me a little bit more, that extra step further. So yes, I've watched the news, I've seen what's happened, but can you give me the surrounding context? I'm coming in to read a piece of research. So that's what I want to see is, the further explanation, point evidence explanation. Give me, more context to what I'm watching. Yeah. I mean, I just taken it back.
You said you can speak English.
I mean, just do something.
Oh wow! No, that one really does take me back. You know what's so crazy though? I do think there are journalists out there who are doing that research and are giving that context. Definitely. But because of these really clickbaity headlines, nobody ever like clicks in to find that further information. Because I do think another problem I'm seeing that I'm finding really frustrating is people are giving their articles really like odd, like clickbaity titles, and the journalist who's actually written the article has done some really extensive, very good work, but the titles are so misleading. So a lot of people aren't even clicking into it because they don't realize that the information they want is actually there, because the title will just put them off of clicking in.
That's it.
So it's kind of like, I feel like people are almost trying too hard to have that viral moment or too hard to be clickbaity to the point where like it's having the opposite effect. So rather than people clicking in, they're moving away from it because they're like, oh, this is going to be another one of those clickbaity
Exactly.
things. I'm not engaging with it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's yeah, exactly, and that's why I'm just it surprises me, especially with the news publications, because I'm just like, you don't actually have to do this. People already know and
Oh,
understand throughout history what you do and what you are. So by you being on Twitter, it's just another easier way for people to be able to get that information. But it should be reported as you would have reported it in the newspaper or on the live news, or as we're going to read it in the journal. It shouldn't be reported as, hey besties, did you know that Russia is saying this and it? Like, no, like the type, like what is happening is enough for people to want to click in and read. Do you know what I mean? When I used to pick up a newspaper, like whatever was on that front page, I'm flipping to page 7 to find out the rest of that story. Do you know what I mean? I don't need you to say, or kind of pander to the way that I speak, or try to use words or slang or things to kind of, no, just give the headline as it is. We are in a recession. I am reading that. I need to know what's going on. I don't need you to give me all the fillers and all the other stuff. I'm going to read it because I want to know what's happening. How did we get here? So you were going to say something.
You know what? Like, I also think, like, you see the way that different social media platforms are trying to morph into each other. So, like, TikTok is kind of
yes, yeah,
and then like Instagram is going to be TikTok,
yeah,
that kind of thing. I think that's the similar sort of like cannibalization is happening with publications. So I feel like publications are seeing like all of these social media pages or all of these blog sites like blow up from doing certain things. So they're like, oh, how can we get more attention? Let's do what they're doing. And it's like, no, we don't need you to do that. We need you to like stay in your lane and like do what we know that you're good at, because you're already doing a good job at that. And I think that's honestly what's happening. Like, people are like panicking because like they feel like, oh my god, this person's getting attention, which means like nobody's going to click into me. It's like people can click into my things. Like they can read. Like them clicking over there doesn't mean that they're going to suddenly not click here. But I don't think like that's the culture that people are walking into the digital space with, which is why we're having like these people try to compete for, I guess, consumers' attention in the same space when it's like you guys are space. You don't need to compete in the same space because you never were in the same space to begin with.
Exactly.
And now you get yourself here and you look crazy. Like that's literally what's happening. Like
it's so true. Because I'm thinking like most of these publications, especially like the news channels, like you're on different channels. One's on channel 1, one's on channel 3, one's on channel 5. You're not even on the same channel. So why, now that you are on quote unquote the same channel, do you feel the need to do the most? People are still flipping between channel 1, 3, and 5. So people are going to do the same thing even online. It's not going to change. I can watch 5 different versions of the same type of content creator because the way they're going to deliver that news and information is completely different. And one doesn't take away from the other, because where this one is going to do, emphasize on this, someone's going to emphasize on something else. And guess what? I enjoy it all the same. I get fed what I want to get fed and I get on with my day. So I just think it's very strange that they sort of adopted that kind of like consumer model of, what you'd expect from like retailers. Because I can kind of understand like PLC and ASOS having a little bit of a back and forth, because they sometimes do that, or like KFC and McDonald's having a little bit. Like, I can kind of get that, okay? Because over the years, people have rivaled, for example, McDonald's and KFC. People always say, oh, if KFC always just had McDonald's chips, that was all the thing. Oh, if McDonald's sold chicken. So you can see the joke in that and the playfulness in that, and that makes sense because they're like for like. But for example, I wouldn't expect McDonald's to be to be tweeting, I don't know, the Prime Minister, and trying to have, and the Prime Minister actually responding and going back and forth. Like, that to me is just
not far off from that,
huh?
You don't, but we're not far off from something like that.
No, we're not.
That's the crazy thing. Like, it could happen. That's not entirely out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. It's a really crazy time. It's an interesting time that we're in. So kind of bringing it back a little bit then to just thinking a bit about how information is reported, because I want to look at, for example, when the Queen was passing, it was so random, because I remember Jason Lee from Hollywood Unlocked, all the way in America, like a week or so prior, saying that the Queen is dead and the Queen had passed. And I thought, why would Jason Lee, all the way over there, know that before the British media have even said anything? That didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. But people saw that and they ran with it. And then, long and behold, about a week and a bit later, it was announced that she had passed. My thing with the way that information is sort of delivered, I'm not too familiar with necessarily whether, how it was done back in the day. If something on that kind of scale that happens, is it that all these publications sort of are in a bid to put the information out first? Maybe you know a bit more about this than me. Or is it a case of just whoever gets the story first? Or are they choosing a specific outlet to let that information? Because I just needed to understand why Jason Lee, all the way in America, had that information.
That was beyond me, because I don't know the specifics, obviously, because for security reasons we would never know.
Yes, of course, yeah.
But things like that, there's definitely a protocol, and I guarantee there's probably an outlet that has exclusivity to announce first, and then everyone else can do it.
Yes.
Like, they've probably got like the setup so that the information is like trickled down to us, or how it gets broadcasted, or which newspaper writes about it first. But even if you like take it back to something less serious, even things like musicians, right? When there was even people like musicians, so like when they're releasing like music and they're like have a video coming out, there will be an outlet that may have an exclusive interview or the exclusive on dropping the music video or however you do it in this era. So if a musician can do that, talk less of a head of state. Like, there's definitely got to be some type of protocol. So him being not even British, he's an American. How the hell does he know before us? Like,
I just didn't understand. I actually thought he was just trolling because he doesn't like the monarchy or something. I don't know, because of everything between Meghan and Prince Harry. I was just like, is this some kind of a sick joke? Why would you say that?
This kind of goes back to what we were saying about kind of like people not honing their skills or not figuring out what the protocols in certain situations are. I think if you had done any sort of research into what is the protocol when a head of state dies, you would probably know that you announcing that, even if you did get the information first. I don't think you did, but let's just play devil's advocate and say that he did the information first. Common sense would probably tell you that, hey, I know I have the exclusive here, but it's probably some type of security breach for me to be the one announcing this, right? So, like, I also think, like, and this is my biggest gripe with CMD, the rush to be first.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Like, is not only, I think, killing journalism, but killing our humanity.
Yes, yeah.
I don't need to be seeing, like graphic images of people, like, on the floor after an accident or things like that, right? Can you imagine, like, what it's like for the family to find out that something has happened to their loved one? Not because they got a call from the police, not because they got a call from, like, some type of local authority, because they're seeing their family's guts pulled out on the side of the road. Let's not do that. Like, that isn't journalism either. That's just cruelty. Why are we doing
exactly? Yeah.
Like, why are we doing that? So I think, going back to the point on Jason Lee, I think, I don't think he got the information first. I don't think it was appropriate that he made that kind of announcement. I think you definitely need to follow some type of protocol. And I think we really need to kill this rush to be first. I understand that it's like cool to be the first and to get the exclusive, but like, if the exclusive is gonna harm people, or it's like not done with care, I don't really think that's the purpose of what journalism is. Like, I don't think we should be in a rush to do it first. I think we should want to do it the best.
Exactly.
It should be more about the quality to me personally. And I know a lot of people be like, but social media, it just comes with the territory. And I just think, if you're running a gossip blog or gossip site, then that you're not really remotely bothered about integrity. But if you're being a journalist, I think integrity has to be a primary element of journalism. It has to be included. Like, ethics in practice, ethics in conduct has to be an element of journalism that we include and go back to, because I feel like we're really losing it.
No, I definitely agree with you. I do think we are losing that. I think we are becoming so desensitized. And again, it doesn't help that you have, big, conglomerates also joining in the tomfoolery. And I think that's why it becomes one big circus, because even the people you trust are now also partaking in the circus act. And it's just like, but why? We need that distinguishment. We need to see that clear difference so we can have an understanding that actually it is important that when we report on certain issues, they're reported in a certain way. And as you said before, protocol is followed, because I think that we are becoming desensitized, not just to seeing, bad things happening or hearing bad news, but we're also becoming desensitized to things that are actually just generally important for our general, evolution and growth. Reading an article shouldn't be like a bothersome thing. It should be something we want to do when we want to find out information about something. And we should be able to know that who we're reading from is somebody who is credible in whatever their field is. And we should want to, if we're going to want to report on news, want to be able to make sure that we're doing so in a way that is going to be conducive for the audience that we're relaying it to. The thing is with a lot of these platforms now is that they've also blurred their own lines. So they want to be fully immersed in, the entertainment space and do all of that, but then they also want to report on world news. But I don't know that that's okay. I do think there needs to be, not that it's okay, but I think it's okay if you understand what it means, A, to be a journalist and to be able to do research and to report on those things. And then also B, to also make that distinguishment when you're creating that content. Because there is somebody who I was very skeptical of before, but I actually gave her a watch and I was like, okay, I kind of actually like the way she presents everything, because she does a good balance of both mixing, politics and entertainment. But it's very, her tone throughout the entire thing is very serious. To her, she sees the two as very interlinked. And she breaks it down in a lot of detail. And who I'm talking about is Candace Owens. And I was watching one of her episodes not even too long ago, and she was just talking about hip hop, and she was talking about how certain artists, like Sexy Red and I've forgotten the other, the City Girls and all these kind of different rappers that are coming through in recent years. How she believes there's a bigger agenda there as to why these are the artists that are constantly being pushed through, instead of artists who maybe have more of a message and or will have more of a positive influence on the Black community in America. And I liked it because she went through, talking through legislation. She went through talking about, different talking points of different presidents. And she went through what even, people who consider themselves, the pioneers of hip hop, their commentary versus what they're actually doing and what they're encouraging and enabling. And I liked that. And I thought I can respect that because I'm actually learning something. But you see, when Jason Lee just went up there and said in the middle of his whatever rant, oh, by the way, the Queen has died. It's sort of just like, well, pause.
Like, what?
How did we get here? You were talking about Rihanna like 5 seconds ago, because he talks about Rihanna like I think in every interview or stream he does. But now we're talking about how the Queen has passed. I just feel like I'm gonna need you to just make it make sense. It just feels very chaotic. And then you want to call yourself, Black media. You want to call yourself a Black journalist, but then it's like, there are actual Black journalists here who are working, so it feels kind of unfair to just kind of group them all in the same, when really and truly it is not the same at all.
And I think this is the distinction that we have to make, because there's definitely, and this is another thing I kind of wanted to, I guess, add into the conversation about whether journalism is dying. I think we really have to have a distinction between what a media personality is, what a blogger is, and what a journalist is. Because I strongly believe that, especially journalists, they have a certain duty of care and an ethical conduct that they have to stick to. Whereas for the other two that I've just mentioned, I don't think that the standards to be expected to be applied.
Yes.
So I think if you're going to call yourself a journalist, there's a certain level of expectation that comes with, like, have you fact checked? Mm-hmm. Have you made sure that this is not fake news? And do you know where this information was sourced from? Can you cite your sources? Mm-hmm. Are you delivering, if this is something sensitive, are you delivering this information in a way that takes into account the sensitivity of the information that you're relaying.
Right.
Like, it even goes back down to the sort of titles that we were talking about.
Yeah.
Like, the title that you use for this article, does it make sense? Are you being clickbaity? Are you being insensitive? Or does it summarize the points that you're trying to get across?
Right.
I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to hook people in. That's what a headline's supposed to do.
Yes.
But I just think there is a certain duty of care, especially when you're dealing with subject matter such as death or things that have like trigger warnings, to kind of like communicate like that's kind of what's going to happen here. So I think, I definitely think we definitely have to start making a distinction between bloggers, movies, and personalities in journalists, because there is a lot going on in the space, and I think the duty of care is very different between. Different.
Absolutely. And I think even when you were just saying that, actually, I was just thinking of YouTubers as well, because YouTubers are notorious for blurring that line, because there's a lot of people that, are commentary channels, so they just kind of comment what's happening in the news or in the world, entertainment, whatever that might be. But then they'll sometimes, get press passes, for example, to go and sit in a Meghan v. Tory court case, for example, and they'll be then given that responsibility to go and feed that information back, while actual journalists are not getting those opportunities. But then going out and doing that, and then you yourself getting into an altercation whilst you're doing that, and then coming back and then effing and blinding and swearing up and down, and people are saying, this is real news. I'm like, whoa. Wow, I just need to take like 5 steps back.
That person, right?
Say again?
Not to be that person, but not to be that person. And again, it's going to be another one of my conspiracy theories. But I genuinely believe that's a part of an agenda. You don't want people who can report properly in those type of rooms. Right. They purposefully fill the rooms with people who are not going to relay the information, because I feel like people can't challenge what they don't know.
Exactly.
If the right information is not being relayed to the public, not of us are going to question anything. Everything is as it's being said. When really, people who are maybe legal background or maybe who have that expertise or that knowledge will be able to pick up on certain words that are happening during these cases, for example, and be like, something's amiss here. Oh, that was an interesting point. Oh, I wonder if something was wrong here. Oh, why didn't the prosecution say this? Why didn't the defense say this? Like, they're not going to interrogate that information, because I think unless you have that expertise, like the trigger point to interrogate further just flies completely over your head. And again, I think that's done on purpose in certain instances.
Yeah,
I have, but this is just to say, I have nothing wrong with like bloggers and people like that being invited to these places. That's how I started. So I could never have a problem with that.
Yeah.
But what I do have an issue with, people unwilling to do the research and unwilling to do the work, because that's where it starts becoming.
I always just say, the truth is probably the most fascinating thing that there is. And a lot of the time when you're telling it, you don't actually need to say anything else. What you're saying will create the shock, the virality. It will create all the moments you're looking for, because as the old saying goes, truth is often stranger than fiction. And so actually, a lot of the times when you're reporting on news or real life events, you don't have to do the gimmicks and the games. You can just tell it as it is. And I promise you, everyone will be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is actually happening. As opposed to, trying to make a 20-minute video with memes and all sorts of things going on. Yeah.
I think, and I don't think this should be the case, but I think this is where we're at the moment, because it's very hard to distinguish between the media personality, the journalist, and the blogger. The onus is now shifted from being on the journalist to fact check and to make sure that all the information is together. The onus is now shifted from whoever's relaying the information to the consumer themselves to like go back and make sure, like, oh, is this correct? Is this fake news? I think this is probably one of the good things I like about Twitter at the moment. Like, whenever something goes out, there's this like box that comes up and says, oh, this is this is an old image, or this is that. And I think that's probably one of the biggest positives on that platform at the moment, because it's, honestly, especially with the rise of AI, I don't think we've even like tapped into that fully, right? With the rise of AI, like, it's so easy to manipulate information and images and imagery to fit like any narrative that you want to. So I think like consumers, unfortunately, we're at a place where consumers have to be way more vigilant and like way more like on it with the information that they're consuming, and actually like check things themselves, because it's getting to the point where like, I mean, I sometimes I feel like publications are doing this on purpose, but people will be putting the wrong images of celebrities when they're talking about them. So like, Like, if we could be like at that point, like, you really, as a consumer, you really have to like be checking. Like,
it's true. Like, I always think that I'm like, you literally type this person's name into your article. Why couldn't you type that person's name into Google to get the right image?
as in,
Like, I just don't understand. You've written it out. So that same way you wrote it out there, or copy and paste it. If it's really itching your fingers to type the name again, copy and paste it into your Google search engine and get the right image. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It does feel like the responsibility has completely been shifted, and I think that could be considered, even when you're looking at the bigger picture of just everything that's even happening, like politically and economically. It's almost everything's been put back into, you know, the general public's hands to kind of fix or resolve or investigate and raise and inquire about. While before we could trust that there was, you know, in terms of like the pecking order of things, that the information we needed would be funneled down to us and we could rely on that to some degree and to some extent. While now it's like we're always having to challenge and check and inquire in order to ensure that we are getting the best of the best, or to ensure that we're getting the truth. And it's just very interesting how things have sort of just kind of turned on their head. But it kind of goes back in terms of just the journalism thing full circle. You know, there not being money being funding journalists, you then have corporations funding people who already have platforms, already have a voice, already have a following, who are then, you know, not necessarily skilled or equipped, going out to do this research on or to talk about certain things, and then not delivering on that. And then you've got mostly naive or, you know, biased followers who just kind of buy into whatever that platform and that person is saying, and then going on to spread that information. And then the real articles are buried deeper and deeper and deeper, and they're sort of just lost into the abyss of the internet, and the truth then becomes a mystery, and then it just becomes all these speculations, and then it's just people's opinions and thoughts, and you know, and it's just sort of like, so I listened to this 45-minute rant, but I still don't understand why the Prime Minister has made a bet with Piers Morgan.
yeah.
Or why Jason Lee thought it was okay to report on the death of the Queen. Or, you know, it's bizarre. It is really bizarre. But I want to thank you so much, Ray, for joining me today. I really appreciate you for being here and having this conversation with me. I love some of the theories that you dropped in there. I think, you know, there's a lot of validity to what you've said. And I think, you know, I wouldn't be surprised with a little bit more research, you know, to find out that maybe some of those things are not too far from the truth. So, yeah, just want to really thank you again for joining me here today. Please do plug your socials again for everyone and let people know where they can find you.
The really awkward part. Hi guys, you can find me at RayFang XOXO across all socials, all of my socials.